Gary, this is long overdue. Welcome to Manufacturing Happy Hour.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Well, since you've long observed the show, so you know how this starts. We are hanging out in MRG Studios today here in Naperville, Illinois. But if we were having a beer or a beverage of your choosing, where would that be? Describe that.
I would say my favorite tavern in the world is the Green Turtle Tavern in Fernandina Beach on Amelia Island in Florida.
All right.
Laid back, outdoor music, local artists, lots of 70s rock cover, which you might know is my thing, and we just love to go sit there and soak it in.
We'll talk about 70s rock a little later on. So let's assume
sure.
we're hanging there, Green Turtle Tavern, maybe a Grateful Dead cover, as much as you can cover the Grateful Dead in the background, right? And someone's asking you about your career story, right? Which is what we're here to start with today.
Okay.
And Miller Resource Group, very successful recruiting firm, big name in the automation recruiting space. But I'm curious, let's go back a number of years. How did you get started in recruiting?
Well, I love stories about serendipity, so it started when my parents met. No, it started when their parents met, so the fact that, so I was in Western Illinois University, about to graduate, unsure what I was going to do. I had a job lined up. I was a bartender and a patron told me I should be in sales. So I started to consider sales. But I had something lined up, it fell through. And then, so I'm a month after graduation, I have nothing going on. My then girlfriend, now my wife, Sandy, said, my sister went to this place in Oak Brook, Illinois called Sales Consultants. And they place salespeople. I went there, I got an interview, why don't you go there? So I went there, and sure enough, they sent me on an interview selling greeting cards or something like that. And I called back a couple days after an interview, timely follow-up. And I asked for the guy, and they said he no longer works here. And I said, well, who's taking his place? And they said, why, are you interested? And I said, sure, it's a job. They wore neckties. I majored in business. It's like a perfect match, right?
Yeah.
So I went in for an interview, and it was a small office, like 7 guys in there, smoking only. And they passed me around. One guy said, sell me this pen, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And the assistant manager said no. He said, I have no experience. I'd be afraid of the phone. The owner of the firm said, you know what? There's something I like about this kid. Let's give him a 1-week tryout. $2 an hour, minimum wage, draw against commission. I said, well, I get the $80 for the whole week, no matter what? He said, yeah. I said, all right, let's give it a shot. And I took to it right away. I liked it, and I just fell into it. It became a natural thing, and I like talking to people on the phone. I didn't know anything about anything, so asking people that question, how did you get started? What do you do? What are you famous for? What do you want to be when you grow up? All these questions just poured out of me because I didn't know anything, and learned later on that those were good skills to have as a recruiter or salesperson. To me, they're kind of interchangeable, but that's how we got started.
Well, I'm interested to learn about another question or set of questions you might have asked, because you teased this a bit when we talked about how you started focusing on industrial automation. So at some point, I think you said you were having a conversation with someone and they're like, hey, can you help me find someone that can work this new thing called a PLC, right? Tell me a bit about that story.
So when I started there, the guy who worked before me, even though he sent me on an interview to sell greeting cards, he was the electrical and electronics specialist. He had a box of index cards. He had a yellow pages opened up to motors and controls or electronic components. Electrical and electronic components were one. And I would just go up and down the list and call these companies. And but if somebody called in looking for help, they were assigned to your industry. And so I was the electrical and electronic specialist and pumps and valves and whatever else too, industrial. But anyway, the guy said, I need to hire a sales engineer to sell a new device for the factory floor. It's called a programmable controller. It replaces relays.
Mm-hmm.
I said, okay. And there was a resume on my desk of somebody who sold relays. And I thought, well, this guy's probably going to want to sell what's going to put him out of business. So I told him about the opportunity. I sent him over there. And the client called me back and he said, do you have anybody else? And I said, no. He said, he's perfect. I'm going to hire him and I need to hire 3 more like him. That company at the time was Texas Instruments, later acquired by Siemens, and now that's part of that world. That sales manager left that company just a few months later and went over to Modicon.
Yeah.
Where he had me help him find a team of sales engineers to sell the micro, the 484, I think it was called, the smallest PLCs. And I helped him hire several people, and then another fellow called, a fellow that some people may remember, a fellow who took me under his wing and taught me a lot. His name was John Pemble.
Okay.
He was the regional manager in Detroit. And he said, are you the one that's helping Bill find all those salespeople? I need about 4 or 5 of them myself. And we just started on it was one after another. And Modicon between 1978 and 1982 grew from about, I think, 10 to 80 salespeople.
Yeah.
And I think I helped them hire half of them.
Wow.
But you can imagine how many people I had to talk to find those, 30 or 40 that they hired. Now, also, what was unique about Modicon at the time is they were paying very aggressively for growth in new sales.
Mm-hmm.
And they did grow rapidly. But there was a recession in 1982, and the growth stopped. The investment in technology, it was just like, and all these people, I almost said guys, but it was mostly guys, but not all. But most of them who were paid on growth, their income slowed down. The recession hit, and they scattered. And they went elsewhere. But they came back in 1983, and I didn't know any better. Somebody said, well, what would you have done if you didn't make it? And I said, I don't know. I never thought about that. I just kept calling. 1993, they started to call back, except they worked for machine vision companies, or they were startup vision companies, or somebody went to work for MeasureX to sell process control and paper control, paper systems. And some went off to sell sensors, and some went off to sell RFID and inkjet. One of my clients, I said, what's an inkjet printer? He says, well, it's like a PLC, but it leaks. So, so that's how we learned about all of it's like if the PLC was at the center of
Sure.
everything that it was connected to was where we developed our practice. And then, and it just kept going, and it kept going, and it kept going. And later on, we had more opportunities than we could handle. So I started hiring people. Incidentally, around 1984, right after that recession, I was like the last man standing.
Mm-hmm.
And the owner of our firm wasn't real healthy, and he asked me if I wanted to buy the firm. And so I said, sure. It just made sense. There was no like forethought really, or it was not a strategic objective. It just seemed like the easiest way to.
Bit of intuition there.
Yeah. I went Friday, I left as a salesman. Monday, I came in as the business owner. So it was kind of unique. But we kept hiring people, and I said, here, you learn about this industry, and you learn about that industry. There's one fellow who was a VP at Modicon back in the day, and he disappeared, and he showed up at a company called Andover Controls, which was our foothold into the building automation business. Mm-hmm. He said, yeah, it's a PLC, but it doesn't control the factory. It controls the temperature and the climate and whatnot in a building. And so we launched that practice. We still have that today. So it's just, again, it was just like, if I had not met my wife, if she didn't pick me up at Papa K's in Macomb, Illinois in 1973, I mean, I don't know that I'd be here.
Well, I've got two questions. First question is, what is Papa K's, or what was Papa K's?
That was the bar I was
Okay.
tending bar in
Okay.
1973. That would have been the other bar that I would have mentioned if I had a second choice.
Sure. Okay. All right. Well, we've always got a round two. So, all right. Well, now that we've cleared up what Papa K's is, I have a question kind of going back to, and I knew we were going to get a good automation industry history lesson there. But going back, one of the things I'd love the manufacturing leaders to take away from this is, what type of conversations were you having with people when you're like, hey, do you want to sell this brand new thing? Right? Like I imagine if I were a salesperson back then, I might have been a little hesitant to jump into something that had never been sold before.
Well, they took great pains to educate me on what the PLC did, and he explained things to me. I mean, John Pembo I still to this day, he said, Gary, in manufacturing, there's things and there's stuff. Things you count, stuff you measure. And it made sense to me. And so, but if you think about it, the PLC has been probably the single most, what's the word I'm looking for? Nothing has affected automated manufacturing in the globe than this device. It has done more to advance manufacturing than maybe anything else, at least from my layman's view. It's been at the centerpiece of all that. Somehow those guys convinced me that was going to happen. And so I just brought that energy. Mm-hmm. I could not explain, how many I/O there were and that sort of thing. And was it Profibus or Modbus? I mean, those things didn't make any sense. I just knew that this product was going to help change the world of manufacturing. This team was incredible. The opportunity to earn and contribute was incredible. And I'm not saying you should take the job, but I think it might be prudent to take a look. And then the clients were awesome at selling the opportunity. I never sold anybody on taking a job. I just tried to sell them on taking a look.
Oh, okay. I think that's an interesting approach to many things, sure. Right? Not necessarily overly selling it, but just like take a look, like give them the nudge.
Yeah, I mean, what they stood to lose was an hour. What they stood to gain was career nirvana, right? So seemed like a pretty good trade-off.
I like that. Well, I want to talk now in the present. So when you and I spoke before this, you mentioned, hey, accountants do accounting, lawyers, they do law, recruiters do recruiting. But, if you're really going to, if a company is really going to attract the best talent in this day and age, and we know that's one of the biggest challenges for companies these days, how do companies tell their story such that their company becomes magnetic? I want to hear your perspectives on this as someone that's been in this game for decades.
Well, I think, it's such a broad question. Mm-hmm. And I could tell a lot of stories about what's worked and what doesn't work. I mean, we've placed thousands and thousands of people and have feedback from tens of thousands of interviews on both sides, like why it worked, why it didn't work, what they liked, what they didn't like. I think, if you want to attract people, you need to be attractive. Mm-hmm. And it's the companies that I think that put some thought into that. How do we attract people? What makes us attractive? And spend some time, companies execs used to tell me they'd spend 2 days arguing about budgets and how much they should be able to spend at lunch, and 0 time talking about how to package their story so they could attract the top people. So, I mean, there's some company in the world that's the best at it. There's somebody that's the worst at it, and everybody else is in between those two. And I just think that the ones that pay attention to it and put some thought into it and try to look at it through the eyes of a candidate. Mm-hmm. I wrote on a website a decade ago that companies who spend as much time figuring out how to attract candidates as they do customers are going to be better mm-hmm. off. I mean, it is a strategic initiative. And you read the books like Good to Great, get the right people on the bus first, and then you can figure out where to go. If you got great people, you can navigate anywhere. So that was important. I think, and one lesson I learned one time, I was presenting to my Vistage group. Back then it was called Tech, and I was part of Vistage for about 10 years, and I was new at it, and I had to give the pitch about my company. I had to do this to a peer group of CEOs that I didn't know. So I started out by saying, there's a sea of people out there. Why would they want to work for you? Is it your products? Is it your vision? Is it your market? Is it your leadership? Is it your compensation plan? Is it your benefit? What is it? Why would somebody want to work for you? And who's going to tell the story to them? And I paused, and then I went into this pitch about Miller Resource Group. We're the greatest. We've got this. We've got tools. We got technology. We got a database. And then they were to give me feedback on my presentation. He said, when you paused in the middle after you asked us all those questions about why would somebody want to work for us, who's going to tell the story, if you'd just shut up right then and give me your business card, I'd have been all over it. So all of our processes and the techniques for talking to it's just volume. We talk to a lot of people, trying to find the ones that match up. And it's not just, people call us headhunters. I like to say I'm a circumstance hunter. You got to find the right person, but it's got to be the right time in their life. Location has to be good. The challenge has to be right. Compensation has to be right. Their mood has to be right. Their family's mood has to be right. The astrological sign has to be. There's a whole lot of things that have to go into somebody, being willing to lean in at just the right time and explore an opportunity. So anyway, that was a long-winded answer to your question, but a company it's our business, and we try to be leaders by example at this, and we're far from perfect. I've paid recruiters to find people for me to tell our story out in the marketplace.
Well, one of the questions I have coming from this, because you really are a modern recruiter, right? You take advantage of a lot of the tools and technologies that are out there to more effectively tell your own story as well. I'm thinking about this from the perspective of, a company, an employer that's listening to this. You made a comment earlier, it's about packaging the story, right? So how are great companies packaging their story today? Or maybe I should phrase it as, how are companies that are really effective at packaging their story today? What are they doing?
Well, I think that they're trying to hit on the many aspects that go into that decision making for a candidate. One of my mentors told me, he said, Gary, selling is nothing more than sitting down in front of your customer, opening up your box of goodies and casting about until you find something that they care about. So if you just say, our technology is where it's at, we're just technology, you'll attract people that are turned on by technology, but you might not attract people that are into leadership or career development or training or design or execution or client facing. If you just talk about compensation, you'll miss out on people that are motivated by innovation. So, culture is the big thing. People want to be part of something. They want to be part of something. They want to be around like-minded people, pursuing similar goals. You remember that the Gallup 12 survey. I love that survey where they proved that profitable companies scored much higher on emotional issues. Do I have a best friend at work? Do I have the right tools does my boss care about me as a person? So when you're designing a strategy, you've got to have a cultural piece. You've got to have a job piece. You have to have what's the industry all about? Where is the industry growing? What's the company history and its vision? What is the leadership team made up and its values? What are they all about? And you got to tell this whole story. Something in there is going to appeal to somebody. It may not be the same thing that appeals to others. But if you don't have people lined up waiting to talk to you,
Mm-hmm.
you don't have a lot of choices.
Sure.
And then when you get them in the door, another mentor asked me one time, he said, Gary, are people jumping over the desk, grabbing you by the tie and telling you that they want to work there? I said, no. He said, well, then you're not selling it properly. So, I mean, you have to, but a good salesperson tries to read their audience.
Yeah.
So it used to be about, tell me why I should hire you, where now it should be, I appreciate your interest in investing in our company. What is it that appeals to you about what you've seen so far? And try to follow that path.
Yeah. Asking the right questions is what I'm hearing from this.
Know thy audience.
Yes. Yes. And I like how you broke it down by, hey, some people are going to be interested in the tech. Some are going to be focused on the culture, right? And it's, like you said, knowing the audience and catering to that individual in the process. So you also talked earlier in your history in recruiting that 1982, I think, was the year where the recession hit, your first recession.
Right.
So you've been around this block more than a few times at this point. And that's maybe a tactical question I want to ask around how do you see recessions impacting people's recruiting strategies? Let's start there.
Well, back then it was just like start and stop.
Sure.
Stop hiring, stop everything, stop investing, count your money. I wasn't very economically astute back then. The first time I heard the word recession, I was like, what does that mean?
Mm-hmm.
Hiring freeze. I didn't know what that meant. So I had to experience it. So it was pretty impactful. I mean, I was about broke. I mean, I went from 2 new cars, a mortgage, and a new child, and to like, where's my next mortgage payment coming from?
Yeah.
And so, like I said, I just kept plowing through it, not thinking there was any other solution, like go find another job. I was just going to plow through it. But, I know it's hard on a lot of people. I don't even remember. There was 87 or 88. There was 93. Around 2001 was horrible, especially in tech. Mm-hmm. We had heavily invested in tech recruiting back then. And I mean, not just industrial tech, but software and the internet bubble, whatnot. And then, of course, 2007, 2008. There's always pain. Mm-hmm. But I think now it's like, it seems to me that, especially in this market right now, given the shortage of just able-bodied people, mm-hmm. From a hiring standpoint, it's not going to be as dreadful. Especially not in manufacturing, because we have to eat.
Right.
And again, I'm still an amateur economist, but the insatiable appetite for goods and services that
still need to be made.
And civilians have, and they've got cash, and they've got trillions of dollars of baby boomer money is going to get passed to the next generation that they're going to spend on things. Mm-hmm. But I've always been fascinated by the world of work and labor, that people have to eat. I mean, you have to reach for that food and put it to your mouth. That's effort. That's labor. And you have to produce output to get income to buy the food. I mean, it's just part of life. And people are going to find an avenue the best way they can. I'm not very gloomy about the economy, because I think talent always finds a way. Yeah. Talented people are always going to have a place. If a company's doing well, they're going to need more talent. Mm-hmm. If they're not doing well, they might need different talent. But I think since as long as I've worked here, I've never talked to a manager that wouldn't be willing to consider another great player for their team. I mean, if you're take any football team, if you're a football team, any pro sports team, if an icon from the industry says, hey, I'm moving to your town, I want to be on your team, what do? Hang up on them?
That's a great analogy.
You talk to them and you find a way, you at least open the dialogue.
Yeah. So is there, I mean, if I'm hearing this right, the good companies are going to be doing this regardless. Is there advice you'd have for the manufacturing leaders on, while we're continuing with the sports analogies, how to keep their eye on the ball, whether it's, a recession or some other distraction in the way of what they want to do to grow?
Well, don't listen to the prophets of doom. You got to keep, I like to talk a lot about the early pioneers.
Mm-hmm.
They had a vision of going west.
Yeah.
Somebody sold them on a dream.
Mm-hmm.
And they had no idea the hardships they were going to face on their way to the promised land.
Yeah.
And they were never really discouraged by that. Most of them kept going. Some didn't make it, unfortunately. Some stopped and settled and,
Mm-hmm.
Hunkered down. But the pioneers, they just kept going. They just kept going. I have the thought about why America is such an innovative country is like, look at all the people that came here for opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the country was founded on the principle of opportunity and a better place and a better life. And it's probably now inbred in us, it's just, you just can't help it. So there's people like, if there's a recession coming, we're going to figure out a way to get around it.
Yeah.
It's like a flooded creek, right?
Mm-hmm.
We got to get across it.
Yeah. I'm we're about a little over halfway through our interview. I've got some other questions, and one that's jumping out is beyond recruiting, right? You have a unique leadership style. So given that we're also recording this in your studio here at MRG offices, anyone watching the video can probably see a lot of Grateful Dead paraphernalia behind me right now. One question I had to kick off our, let's say, leadership portion of the conversation was, how has the Grateful Dead influenced your leadership style? And maybe provide some backstory too.
Oh, I don't. I went to a lot of shows when I was in college, and I still every day I probably listen to it. It's my Sirius XM channel all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's just something in there that moved me. But I think I started reading Jack Kerouac and whoever those people were way back in the day,
Mm-hmm.
and then actually later on somebody turned me on to Eastern philosophy. I started reading some of that, and I don't know. I've always been a reader and a listener.
Mm-hmm.
So when I was 23 years old, I asked some very well-to-do vice president, say, what advice would you give me as a young person starting out in my career? He said, well, if I were you, I would make sure you have a tape player in your car and listen to tapes every day on the way to work. What am I going to do, argue with them? So I did. And I started listening to books and listening to tapes at an early age, and probably hundreds, if not thousands of books. But it was more than, in the beginning it was Zig Ziglar and Jim Rohn, but later on it was management books and leadership books and philosophy books and behavioral economics books. And I don't know, but we both discussed that book, Everything I Learned About Marketing, I Learned from the Grateful Dead. I mean, They were one of the original network marketers. I mean, they basically gave their stuff away.
Mm-hmm.
They allowed people to tape their music and share it. It didn't cost them anything. It could have hurt them, but it only built the following to a greater degree. I mean, and still, to this day, there's hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people that follow them, almost like in a cult-like way.
Mm-hmm.
But they never tried too hard.
Sure.
Other than to give their stuff away and increase their fan base.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't try to overtly sell them too many things and that sort of thing. But so I don't know. I wouldn't say that they influenced my leadership as much as some of the other things I've read and the coaches and mentors I've had, though.
Sure. Well, I was going somewhere with this, and I'm sure someone picked up the value as they're listening to this out there of sharing content and insights for free to pull in your ideal client, audience, whatever you want to describe them as. But you did talk about your early mentor saying, hey, have tapes in the car, right? Listen to these books that I might as well be part of the Gary Miller book club, given the amount of recommendations you've thrown my way. But, now that you've been through so much of your career, you talked about the early advice that you received. What advice would you give to someone starting your career? What's been one of the most timeless pieces of advice that you've received in the past 30, 40 years that you'd still give to someone today?
Well, that was one.
Yeah.
I mean, and it's not reading and listening and you know, Zig Ziglar said, you're where you are, you're what you are because of what's going into your head, and you get to control that. So, you know, if somebody is thinking about coming to work for us and he's thinking about going to work for somebody else, and he comes in my office and he sees library books and we start talking about books and I've read thousands of books. I mean, and the other place he goes and the candidate says, I'm curious if you've read any books that have impacted you. And the guy says, no, I don't do that. I've got this. You know, so I mean, it's just kind of a mindset. I mean, I'm a lifelong learner. I mean,
Sure.
I'm looking for a retirement mentor. I'm trying to figure out how to. I said jokingly in a quote a couple weeks ago in a LinkedIn post. I said I'm trying to quietly quit, but I can't. I'm too engaged and involved with our people, and I'm enjoying watching them succeed, and it's very hard to let go. And I can't imagine not being engaged. So it's something I want to learn about. And so I think just you somehow you have to adopt a learning mindset. It's funny when I bought the company, I was still a sales guy, but I started reading books on management and leadership, and I recognized that those were the books that my clients were reading, and we had some very interesting conversations about management philosophy and leadership philosophy. So, which is then why I thought it a good idea to start going to association meetings and conferences and sitting next to our clients. I don't go there as much to sell and network. I'm not very pitchy when I go to those things, but I am sitting next to them, observing what they're interested in, what they want to learn about, and that's what I want to learn about.
I like how you present it as like a bit of a contrarian strategy, but isn't that what we all should be doing, like at these events? Like going there and observing and just listening and figuring out what's important to them?
Well, like I say there, I'm not going there, I'm not very pitchy. Well, yes, I'm not very pitchy. I've never been a very pitchy person, but if somebody wanted to sell me something or wanted me to sell them something, I would not say, no, not here, not now. Of course,
Sure.
We talk about it. I have a vision. Everybody I talk to, every client prospect, that I'm going to win their business and get all their business for the rest of time. So that's like my benchmark.
Yeah.
And so far, I've not done that. We've had some very good clients that we've impacted in a big way, and there's nothing more gratifying than repeat business.
Yes.
Other than watching your team excel. But, you know, repeat business where, hey, you did a good job there. We need more people like that. You get us. I appreciate that. That's why we do what we do.
Yeah.
You know.
I normally save this question for the very end of the interview, but I want to see where you go with this, just because there's so much that myself and all the listeners could learn from you, and so many stories and examples you have. You know, today we've talked about how you got started. We've talked a little bit about recruiting, a little bit about leadership. Is there anything that hasn't come up yet that you're dying to talk about during this conversation? Something you wish I would have asked you?
No, I don't think so, because there's any one of a variety of places we could go.
Yeah. For the record, I still have more questions for you.
No, I think you mentioned a leadership philosophy, and I think recruiting is in itself kind of a leadership event, that you're leading somebody to a new place or a new avenue to find talent or whatever, but you're basically leading people down a path. And so I feel like, how can you lead anybody anywhere unless you're going somewhere yourself? And so I feel like I'm on this journey that I'm out there trying to figure things out. The more I learn, the more I realize I have a lot more to learn. I'm a quote collector.
Okay.
Not like I'm dropping them here and there and everywhere, but I actually have a scrapbook.
Oh, interesting.
Of quotes that I've gathered over time. But somebody asked me, what's your leadership style, and I said, "There's one in there," and I think it's Pope Paul the Sixth or Pope John the 23rd. I don't know. He said, "See everything, correct a little, overlook a lot."
Mm.
And so I just really try not to. I mean, we've been remote for a couple of years. There's some people here today. We're here today. There's some people visiting. For the most part, our people have been remote. I have no idea what they're doing minute by minute, day by day. I just trust that they're doing well. I'm offering services, support whenever we can, give them the tools to get, and they're having record performance.
Yeah.
And it's just so gratifying. I miss them.
Sure.
I miss the buzz for sure. I told them last week I went to see a play a couple weeks ago in the city, Evan Hansen, and I was so moved by the live performance. And I've always been moved by live performance. I don't know why. Even at the Green Turtle Tavern, I'm moved by the live performance. But I think I miss seeing my people and hearing them in action.
I love it.
Because they're good.
It's been a party here today, though. You got the whole crew here today.
It was pretty wild. Noisy.
It was nice. It was nice, but yeah, no, it was good. I like the energy here, and this is not my first time here. It won't be the last. Just a few more questions for you. This next one's like a multi-part but rapid fire type question. So I made the little joke earlier about the Gary Miller book club, which isn't really a joke. You've recommended everything from Lonesome Dove, cowboy novels, all the way to the book we referenced earlier, Everything I Learned About Business, I Learned from the Grateful Dead. What book has had the longest impact on you? We'll give the audience some required reading after this episode.
Probably the Tao Te Ching by Lao Tzu.
Okay. Give us a 1-minute summary.
Well, it's just this hermit that was roaming around ancient China about 2000 BC, and he wrote down his philosophy of living and passed it on to some people. But you'll see, chop wood, carry water. A journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. There's so many philosophical quotes that can last a lifetime and mean so many different things. But it's also very calming.
Okay.
Things like whether you're going up the ladder or down, your feet aren't on the ground and it could be shaky. So stay grounded, stay centered.
This recommendation checks out as a self-described quote collector, as you called yourself a moment ago.
Yeah. But, be careful. Don't try to become a superstar. The teacher should never outshine the teaching.
Mm.
I
like that one. I've never heard that one before, but that immediately resonated.
Yeah. So anyway, but that's led me to so many other books.
Sure.
I mean, I love Thinking Fast and Slow with David Kahneman. It's like, behavior and why humans do what they do. And I just I'm a geek for those kind of books. But then again, a novel like Lonesome Dove or something like that I can pull leadership lessons out of that too.
Sure. I'm still working my way through it, but it's been an excellent read so far. Well, just one more question, some actionable advice for the audience out here. And it's a two-way question, right? What's a question that most candidates don't ask their potential employers that they should be asking? And then I'll tell you part two here in a second.
Well, I used to, I grew up in the south side of Chicago, so I'd tell clients, so why is working for you a good deal? When I was doing my intake calls. But I would say, well, what's it going to be like working for you? I mean, tell me about the most successful hire you've ever had. What did they do? What behaviors did they exhibit to make them so successful? How did they become what they were? And then you're making a judgment then. I don't tell candidates to pursue jobs, crazily, especially if they're not sure about it. But the same thing, like the client before, if the candidate doesn't want to work there, you don't really have anything to decide if you're an employer.
Yeah.
If you're a candidate, if you're not leaving a good impression, then if they don't want to hire you, you don't have any decisions to make. So you've kind of got to get to that point. But I think I've spoken to college students, engineering students, and I'll say, hey, who wants to be in sales? And a lot of them look down at their shoes, right? And I say, well, too bad, because now you're in sales, and your services are what's for sale. You've got to go out there and find a customer, an employer that has a problem, and you need to solve it. So you need to understand what the problem is and then demonstrate how your skills can help them solve that problem. So if you're asking questions like that, what problems are you trying to solve? What does a great employee look like in your eyes? Tell me about the best candidate you've ever hired. Where did they come from? Tell me about the best employee you've ever had. What behaviors you're making the person think about things that they might not have thought of. And
that's great advice.
One of my mentors told me a long time ago, and this is talk about lessons that stick with you. He said, a great salesperson leaves value whether or not they sell anything. And so I've always tried to ask customers questions that make them, like 2 days later, they said, that guy Gary asked me this question, and I'll be darned if we got to find an answer to that. Well, if I'm still in their head, that's a good thing.
That's a great, wow, awesome stuff.
So when a candidate asks me questions that make me stumble, I'm usually intrigued by that candidate.
And I know we're coming up on time, but in 1 minute, what's a question that most employers should be asking candidates that they don't ask?
It used to be, why should we hire you? I mean, and again, now you get slapped on the hand if you ask that, but I think they can be framed more if we work together, what could we do together that we couldn't do separately? And try to create a team atmosphere from the get-go. I mean, what do you want to become and how can I help you get there?
Yeah. Or
what do you want to be when you grow up? And let's see if this place is a place that, with my support, we can help you get there.
Well, Gary, I learned everything from every one of our conversations that we've had over the years. This one was no different. I'm just glad we got to record this one and share some of your insights with the rest of the audience. So thank you for taking the time today to jump on Manufacturing.
Thank you. I hope I didn't ramble too much. After the Grateful Dead, there was the Allman Brothers. So I hope I wasn't a rambling man. So
hey, what a great way to end it with some old rock and roll. So thanks again, Gary.
All right, thank you very much.
Cheers.
Bye, Chris.